Guys, let me go on and tell you something. It has been a week. And when I say a week, it has been a week. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the exhaustion on my face. If you're listening on audio, you can hear my voice. Colds and technological issues have plagued Pigskin Frenzy, and you can see it on YouTube. You can't see it on audio, but you're just imagine a new set here. It looks cool. Looks cool. Got a cool little window wall behind me, and some black and green and all. It's gonna be more lively set of Pigskin Frenzy, and we got it. And we got a new set because we moved locations to the great state of Illinois, the land of Lincoln. So we moved, new set, comes with technological issues, plagued us all last week. We finally got everything fixed. Wi-Fi, technological issues all have been fixed. Everything's good in the hood. Cold, got a cold Thursday, wasn't feeling it, and still am a little bit rusty in my voice and in my nose. So just bear with me. I'll get better. I'll hopefully be better by Christmas time, which is in 2 weeks. So welcome to Pigskin Frenzy on this wonderful and very cold Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joel Norris. And whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, listening on Podbean, or listening on Apple, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by me. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple, all you have to do is just follow and share around with others. X, Instagram, and Facebook. Just type in Pigskin Frenzy. Follow, like the pages there. You'll get episode updates. You'll get news and highlights from across college and NFL football. You will get trivia questions on Instagram stories. Go and answer today's trivia question, as well as all things up to date for Pigskin Frenzy. College football day today, we are going to recap Army and Navy. I did indeed cover that game this past weekend. It was a fun game. It's really fun to just watch it and see it, and it was my first year covering it, so I'm excited about it. We're going to talk about that one. We're also going to preview and predict some of this weekend's first slate of bowl games, because it's the season of giving. It's Christmas time, and that means we're going bowling. As I just threw it up, bowling. Strike one, strike two. Okay, never mind. We're not going to talk about that. But bowling. We're going bowling, and it is bowling season. So, bowling. Then we're going to also, and quite frankly, recap a little bit of Conference Frenzy, because I didn't get the chance to fully recap Conference Frenzy. We're going to talk about that just a tiny bit. Not going to go over the stats, but we're going to talk about that, as well as the transfer portal, the Heisman. It is all going down on Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Keep plugging into Pigskin Frenzy, guys, on all platforms, audio platforms included, Spotify, Apple, Podbean. Keep plugging in on there. Guys, keep plugging in on X, Facebook, and Instagram for all things to date for the show. Now, before we kick off everything else and just talk about everything else, we're also going to talk about the college football playoff criteria, because I've had a lot of complaints and a lot of talk about, okay, yes, you put your reaction video out a week and a half ago, but we want to hear more about it. I'll give you my take on it, but we're not going to predict any of college football playoff or New Year's Six bowls until it gets closer till. So games we're going to be talking about and covering for bowl games: the Bahamas Bowl, LA Bowl, Cure Bowl, Independence Bowl. So 4 games. Okay, so let's just talk. My voice is it may sound a little rusty, so just bear with me on this episode. Okay, let's talk about Army Navy, shall we? I picked the Army Black Knights to win that game. I was right. It was close. And I thought, honestly, that this game, honestly, wasn't going to be all that close. I thought it wasn't going to be close at all. Final score, and we're going to go into this. Final score was 17-11. Army defeated Navy. I thought the game was going to be a little bit lopsided. I thought Army was going to win by a score of around 31-10. And I was wrong. It was a close, hard-fought game. Just how I like these rivalry games. Hard-fought, close game. Bryson Daly for Army, man, he was something. 7 for 14 with 54 yards and 1 touchdown, 27 carries with 84 yards. Kanye Idoa, 13 carries with 88 yards. Awan Marshall, 2 carries with 19 yards, 2 receptions with 9 yards. Jacoby Buchanan, 4 carries with 9 yards. Casey Reynolds, 3 receptions with 32 yards. Tyson Riley, 4-yard touchdown reception. The defense even racked up 3 sacks and 1 turnover. Ty Lavatai for Navy, 16 for 26 with 179 yards and a touchdown with 19 carries with 74 yards. Alex Texa, 9 carries with 34 yards, 2 receptions with 9 yards. Brandon Chapman, 2 receptions with 24 yards and 12-yard carry. Jaden Embarger, 6 receptions with 75 yards and a touchdown. Eli Heidenreich, 4 receptions with 56 yards. Linebacker Colin Ramos was the highlight of this defense, racking up 16 total tackles. Now, let me go on and tell you something. Just me, guys. Just me here. That game was a little too close. I think it was very competitive. I think, it could have gone either way. I think that Colin Ramos was a big difference maker for the Navy midshipman defense. I thought the game was very physical, very tough, and like always, it was back and forth. I honestly thought there's some years where it's been, not as close, but this year it was extremely close. I thought this is going to be one of the years where it wasn't going to be close. But somehow, some way, Army pulled it out. And Army kind of just out physical a little bit Navy. And that's what it was. Army just kind of out physical Navy just a little bit and held on. I thought Bryson Daly ran the ball well. I thought the rushing attack for Army was good. I really didn't say this because y'all didn't hear me say this, but I was telling some of my family and friends that I feel like the keys to this game were that Navy needed to slow down Army and vice versa. I felt like who was going to play better at quarterback and who was going to slow down each other more. I felt like Army slowed Navy down just a tad bit more than Navy did Army. So I think Army played a heck of a game. Navy also played a heck of a game. They fought hard, but I feel like Army ran the ball just a tiny bit better and got the win here. So final score, 17-11. Army defeated Navy. Not a lot to say about this one other than the fact that I was right. You have to slow down these triple option teams. These are hard offenses to stop. All they do is run the ball, and it is just, full steam ahead. They keep going, run the ball, and that is what they do. So final score, 17-11, Army defeats Navy. Let's recap Conference Frenzy just a little bit. Tiny bit. Not going to go over the stats. I wrote all the stats down last week, and the internet was all fuzzy and the technological issues happened. So it is all good. I'm still salty about it, as you can see, but hey, we're here. We are here and doing the show. So let's recap Conference Frenzy just a little bit. SMU defeated Tulane 26-14. I said that SMU was going to win that game a couple of weeks ago. I thought, hashtag pony up, by the way, pony up. They're a solid football team. Unfortunately, they are not playing in the New Year's Six Bowl. Liberty is. Let me get to that later on in the episode. But SMU defeated Tulane 26-14. I felt like Kevin Jennings was a solid player in this game. He didn't play the best game, but he didn't play too terrible of a game. It got him the win. Nonetheless, Jalen Knighton also played really, really good. 75 yards and a touchdown with 15 carries. He ran the rock well. And SMU is a team that usually hangs up 50 points on people. They have the ninth best offense in the FBS. And Tulane last year, in my honest opinion, was the best Group of 5 team out there. Now it's Liberty and SMU. You can argue with that one. Along with it, you can even put a Troy or Miami, Ohio up there. But we're going to get to Miami, Ohio in a little bit. But here we go. SMU, they ran the rock well. They played a better offense well and had a better offensive game plan than Tulane did. With Tulane, I kind of felt like Tulane kind of fell off. I'm going to be real. I think there's a lot of games that they could have won by more than what they won by. They could have beaten East Carolina by 4 or 5 touchdowns. I wouldn't say 4 or 5. Let me just retract that statement. I'll say they could have beaten them by 3 scores, but they beaten them by a single score or a field goal. Tulsa could have beaten them by 3 scores, beat them by a field goal or a single score. They kind of fell off a little bit. They played a great game against Ole Miss. Ole Miss did defeat them by a couple of scores and ended up beating by a couple of scores. But with Tulane is the team that could, honestly, when you look at them, be a team that could very well go back to a New Year's Six bowl. But they just didn't play like it. In my honest thoughts, I just felt like they kind of dipped a tiny bit. Speaking of Tulane, we're going to get to the coaching carousel again today. There's some more coaching carousels that we're going to talk about, and we're going to break some of this stuff down. We had a lot to talk about on this show, guys. Jam-packed. So, final score was 26-14. SMU defeats Tulane. Tulane just kind of fell off a little bit. It's okay. Tulane's a good football team, and they deserve to go to a bowl game, obviously, because they played really, really well. SMU deserves to go to a good bowl game, too. And they are not making the New Year's Six bowl, unfortunately. Liberty is, but we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit, because it's a good example that we're about to use in the college football playoff talk. So SMU defeats Tulane, pony up. So let's talk about Michigan and Iowa. The Big Ten championship game, I was right on that. I said that game was going to be not close. Final score, 26-0. But I was also wrong. Excuse me. I was also wrong. I said the game was going to be close, but it was close. You're thinking, dude, it was 26-0. Why are you saying it wasn't close? I'll tell you why I say it was close. Because of Iowa's defense. They played great. I mean, Blake Corum had 2 touchdowns, 52 yards. But here's the deal. Iowa's defense kept them in it, man. They played with a lot of toughness and even gave Michigan fits. Michigan, at times, punted the ball. And Michigan wasn't moving the ball like normal, if that makes sense. They were moving the ball, and they fought for it, but they had to fight for it. It wasn't like, okay, we were just going to just walk in and get it. It was a fight. It was a clear, boxing match to get every yard, because Iowa was not letting them just going to run all over them. They were not just going to sit there and let them just play with them and toy with them. Iowa was going to fight, and they did. The reason why they had no points was because they don't have the offensive firepower to score points with Michigan. Michigan outmatched them in the end, and that is what happened. 26-0. Michigan defeats Iowa, but Iowa played a solid game. They got a Citrus Bowl game coming up against Tennessee. I fully expect right now the line favors Tennessee. If I'm thinking about it right now, this is who I'm leaning towards. I'm not going to say who I am picking, but if I'm leaning towards anybody, you would have to favor Tennessee because of the offense, but that defense is pretty salty enough to hang in there with Tennessee. So let's just see what happens in the Citrus Bowl in that game. But Michigan going to the playoff. They are going to Pasadena against the Crimson Tide of Alabama in the Rose Bowl, 1-4. We're going to talk about that here for the weeks to come. We're going to talk about that and preview and predict that before New Year's, and we're going to talk about that game on the show. But they're in the playoff. They are in the playoff. Final score, 26-0. Michigan defeats Iowa. Texas and Oklahoma State. Texas wins the Big 12 championship. They blew out Oklahoma State. I said that they were. 49-21 was the score. Quinn Ewers had a record-setting day with 452 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was the highlight reel for Texas. They could do no wrong. They couldn't do any wrong, right? I mean, play after play was big gains, big gains. Ollie Gordon was not a factor. They shut him down. But Anthony Bowman played his heart out. He played with 3 touchdowns for Oklahoma State. He threw he threw triples in the air. He threw triple dimes in the air, got the Cowboys 21 points, but Texas was just outmatched them. And Texas secures a playoff spot. Oklahoma State goes to the Texas Bowl against Texas A&M. We will talk about that one later on. Not in this episode, but in weeks to come, we will talk about that game. Texas secures a playoff spot against Washington, and that will be the Sugar Bowl matchup, 2 versus 3, an Alamo Bowl rematch from last season coming into effect for the Sugar Bowl into the playoffs this year. So that's going to be a tight game, Texas-Washington. That's going to be fun. We're going to break that game. We're going to cover that game as well. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about bowl season. Texas, they look good, man. They look like they could probably win the national championship. They keep playing like that, they might do it. They might do it. Final score, Texas 49, Oklahoma State 21. Let's go with Washington and Oregon, Bama, Georgia. Then we're going to get into the final. We're going to talk about the final frenzy rankings really quick because as for those of y'all who didn't see it on Instagram, X, and Facebook, I posted that on all socials. So we're going to talk about that and just give you a recap of what I posted before Selection Sunday there. So my frenzy rankings, the final frenzy rankings. So Washington, Oregon, I thought Oregon was going to win the game. I was wrong on that. Washington wins 34-31. Michael Penix had a good game, 319 yards and a touchdown, but it wasn't just mainly Michael Penix. It was Dylan Johnson. Dylan Johnson was the key to this game. He played like a madman. I mean, 28 carries, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7-yard reception, and he was 2 for 2 with 7 yards and a passing touchdown. He could do no wrong. Dylan Johnson was the workhorse for this team. He was a key player in this. And I said that Washington needed to play Oregon physical, and they did. They played Oregon physical. Need I remind you that Oregon made some mental errors in their first game that they played in Seattle? They didn't even make any mental errors. Washington just beat them outright in this football game. Washington, solid team. They are going to the playoffs against Texas in the Sugar Bowl. Oregon's going to go play Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl. And we're going to talk about those games later on. We're obviously going to cover them. But Washington looked good, man. They look like a team that could, who knows? They may can go to the national championship. But Oregon, still a tough team. Played them close, but just could not hold on and beat Washington in the end. Back-to-back wins over Oregon, Washington, the Pac-12 champions, and they go undefeated into New Orleans against Texas. Let's talk about Georgia, Alabama really quick. You obviously have heard, right? We also got to talk about Florida State, Louisville. We'll get into that last before we talk about Georgia. After we talk about Georgia and Alabama. Let's talk about Georgia, Alabama really quick. Bama 27, Georgia 24. Georgia 29-game winning streak comes to an end, and the playoff hopes were dim. Jalen Milroe played light. He played a solid game, 192 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Roydell Williams replaced Jace McClellan in that game. They ran the rock well, and they played out. They just out-physical them and outmatched them in the very end. Georgia played a good game, but they just could not slow down Bama. Bama grinded them out, ran the ball, and Georgia just couldn't figure out what to do with Bama. They couldn't figure out how to stop them. If you need a key and a recipe and a formula to, let me just say, I guess, contain Georgia and or defeat Georgia, you go to Tuscaloosa, you look at Nick Saban and say, how do we beat Georgia? Because it seems like right now, the only one who knows how to beat Kirby Smart in Georgia is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Only because Kirby Smart knows Alabama so well. And they know each other really well. Nick Saban, that's his student right there. Kirby is facing his master, and the master defeats the student once again. And it was one of those games where it was like, oh man, Georgia was favored. I picked Georgia to win the game. I picked Georgia to go to the playoffs. Didn't work out that way. It did not work out that way. But final score 27-24. Bama defeats Georgia. Georgia's out of the playoffs. Bama is in, and they are the SEC champions, and they upset and defeat Georgia and stop Georgia from three-peating. Their three-peat journey comes to an end. We will have a new national champion this year. So, Florida State, Louisville. Let's talk about this game really quick. Bama played really, really well. And this was the debate here because, wow. Okay, here we go. 16-6, Florida State defeats Louisville. I picked Florida State to win. Louisville, Florida State, the game wasn't really all that, back a little term, fireworks, if that makes sense. It was more of a defensive showdown. Florida State's defense, and let me go on and tell you something. Florida State's defense is a championship defense. I don't care what anybody says. They have a championship defense here. Brock Glenn took over for Tate Rodemaker. Tate Rodemaker was hurt. Didn't show any really promise, but he's a true freshman, so give him time. 8 for 21 with 55 yards. Not the best, but Lawrence to a Philly, 10 carries with 118 yards and a touchdown is suffice. Does enough to get on the ground, and that will suffice for them to get stuff on the ground done and to score. I mean, their defense, I mean, for real. I mean, let me just talk about this. 7 sacks. Louisville couldn't do anything. How is Louisville going to win a game with 7 sacks? He's on his back 7 times. That's ridiculous. Jared Verse, a highlight for this game as well. Jack Plummer, he had some moments, but he didn't capitalize on them. And what I mean by that is he had some wide open guys, but he would underthrow them or throw it right to the defense, and it would get batted down. And, I mean, 111 yards with an interception. Jahar Jordan couldn't really get anything going on the ground. They only scored 6 points. It was a kind of a low-scoring game at first, and Florida State ran away with it in the end, and their defense really did shine. 16-6. Florida State is undefeated. The ACC champions in 13-0. That was the Conference Frenzy, pretty much. Our recap for Conference Frenzy. It was fun. Hopefully next year I will give you more of an in-depth recap of it. But due to the technological issues, due to me having a, cold, I guess, cough, do a cold, that everything just, happened. I just had to give a quick recap of it. And I wanted to give y'all a quick recap of it because y'all deserved it. So let's talk about the Final Frenzy rankings, and let's talk about the college football playoff for a little bit because we need to discuss this before we break down transfer portal, before we break down the Heisman Trophy, and before we break down, the bowl games, because we need to talk about this stuff, guys. And coaching changes, because I want to talk about that as well. If you haven't heard, I'm pretty sure you already have heard. I've posted it on X. You've probably already read it. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it anyway. So, Final Frenzy rankings go as this list goes. As follows: Troy 25, Tulane 24, Oregon State 23, Miami, Ohio at 22, because Miami, Ohio played really, really well. They won the MAC. They deserve it. We're going to talk about Miami, Ohio here in a little bit. Iowa 21. I only put Iowa in there because I thought they played pretty well for the circumstances that they had in the Big Ten Championship. They didn't have an offense, but they for sure had a defense, and they gave Michigan some trouble. So I think that 21 is a good spot for Iowa. SMU 20. I think SMU played good enough to get the 20th spot. Tennessee 19. Louisville at 18. Not too far enough because they did give Florida State some trouble. So I'm not going to drop them out completely, but 18, and the final spot for them is Louisville at 18. NC State at 17. Solid football team is NC State. They played North Carolina lights out, and they beat them lights out. So good on NC State. The highest Group of 5 ranked team is Liberty. I agree with this. 16 is Liberty. Notre Dame is 15. LSU is 14. We're going to get into Jaden Daniels here in a little bit. Penn State, 13. Arizona, 12. They play Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. Ole Miss, 11. Penn State and Ole Miss play each other in the New Year's Six Bowl, Peach Bowl, and the Peach Bowl. Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, New Year's Six Bowl for Ole Miss and Penn State. They play each other in Atlanta on December 29th. So, Oklahoma at 10. Missouri plays Ohio State. Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Number 9, Missouri. Number 8, Oregon. They play Liberty. They play Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl. Ohio State, number 7, Georgia 6, Alabama 5, Florida State 4, Texas 3, Washington 2, and Michigan 1. And that was the top 4. That was by playoff until Selection Sunday happened. So let's talk about the college football playoff criteria here a little bit. A good conversation that leads into it. My honest thoughts on how everything went down, because we haven't had time to talk about this. So let me just talk about this. I posted it on the reaction video on socials, on Facebook and Instagram. Go and check it out. But I'll give you a more in-depth talk about it, I guess. I see where both sides are coming from. And that's how I'm going to start it out. I see where both sides are coming from. I see where Florida State's coming from. I see where Bama's coming from. Michigan 1, Washington 2, Texas 3, Alabama at 4, and the first 2 out were Florida State and Georgia. Now, here, and this is just me, who I think, if you want to look at who the 4 best teams were, because this is what this is about, right? College football playoff, and they said this last year. It's about the 4 best teams. They even said it this season. The 4 best teams. We're going to put the 4 best teams in. That is the motto. Not only just last year, it's been the motto since 2014. The 4 best teams. We're going to put the 4 best teams in, but it's not about computers and the BCS. It is about the 4 best teams. Guys, I was alive when the BCS happened. I was little watching football when the BCS happened. It was all computer done. Now it's a committee thing done involving with some computers. But that's not the point. That is not the point. The point is the 4 best teams. Then it became along of strength of schedule, strength of record, resume, eye test, all this stuff. Who deserves it more? And that became a factor. Bama got 4. Florida State was 5. Georgia was 6. When you look at everything, Florida State was undefeated. This is the first time ever that an undefeated Power 5 conference champion was left out of the playoff in favor of a one-loss team. Granted, they won the SEC championship, and they've been playing like lights. They've been playing on a whole other level ever since that USF game, that South Florida game in week 3. But they're still undefeated over a one-loss team. That's how you look at it. Now, when you look at everything, though, Texas is a one-loss team as well. But however, they were the highest group of the 1 losses, right? But you got to put the 4 best teams in, right? They said that Florida State's performance was dipping, and it was dipping. They were not like they were with Jordan Travis. If y'all want to be, y'all can hate me on that, but that's the truth. The wrong decision wasn't made. If you want to look at it like that, if you want to talk about the 4 best teams, the wrong decision wasn't made besides one factor. And I'll tell you that in a minute. Now, 4 best teams, if you want to look at it like that, Bama needed to get in. But if you want to look at the most deserving, Florida State needed to be in over Alabama. I can see where everyone is coming from. 4 best teams? Right. But let me give you an example. I'm going to defend the committee. You put the 4 best teams in. That's right. You made the right choice. But now I also see where Florida State is coming from. I see where they're coming from because they're undefeated, did everything imaginable to put themselves in the position to get into the top 4. And they still didn't get in. They won the ACC championship with a 3rd-string freshman quarterback, and they still didn't get in. So I understand their argument there. Give you an example. The depth of candidates this year was tremendous to talk about. Last year, not so much. TCU lost to a 2-loss Kansas State team. Kansas State won the Big 12 championship. They didn't get in, but they got into the Sugar Bowl. The debate was 2-loss non-conference champion Alabama and one loss non-conference TCU. TCU was 12-1. Bama was 11-2. Who do you put in? You put in, if you want to talk about the four best teams, you put in Alabama over TCU. Alabama needed to get in because Alabama was better than TCU. If you want to look at it like that, and they were. They were. Don't believe me? Look at the national championship. They would have played Georgia a lot closer in the Natty than TCU did. Georgia routed TCU 65-7 that year, or this last season. When you look at the playoff with that, they put TCU in because they're a one-loss team and they earned it. It was more fair. But Bama was better than TCU. Another example, and this has nothing to do with the playoff, but it's a New Year's Six Bowl. SMU Liberty on who goes to play Oregon. SMU got snubbed out of a New Year's Six Fiesta Bowl against Oregon for Liberty because Liberty was 13-0. The quote was, "Well, Liberty won all their games." That does not make any sense because Florida State won all of their games and they need to be in. So point is this. It's wishy-washy. The criteria is messed up. It is messed up. Florida State got robbed. Not denying that. They did get robbed. Is Alabama a better team? Yes. They picked the right choice, but Florida State still got robbed. Here's the deal. You need to change the criteria on how you vote and how you do things. Point blank. Even with a 12-team playoff coming up next season, because now we're expanding to 12. Yes, you still need to change the criteria. What is the criteria? Is it strength of schedule, strength of record? Is it resume? Is it eye test? What is it? Who's better? What's more fair? What is it? And that is what you look at. And that is what everybody else is looking at, but it's just confusing. It really is confusing. The criteria is broken. I think it needs to be changed. And that's pretty much all I got about my thoughts on that. But I think the right team's in. I just think the committee did wrong by how everything went down. Point blank, how everything went down. Some of their decisions did not make any sense, and they need to change their criteria. That's just my point. That's just my point blank on the whole subject matter. So that was the college football playoff criteria. Guys, let's talk about some of these New Year's Six bowl games, though. I mean, let me just go on and say this. I'm not going to predict them. You're going to think as I get on my cellular device for the New Year's Six bowls. I'm just going to sit here and say this. New Year's Six bowls, they still matter, and they still are good. They still matter. So we're going to talk about this. Obviously, in the playoff, here's what we got. Rose Bowl, January, New Year's Day, Rose Bowl, playoff game, semifinal. We got Michigan at Alabama, number 1 versus number 4. 8:45 p.m. Eastern on New Year's, right after the Rose Bowl. Another semifinal, Sugar Bowl, Washington versus Texas. And then December 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern in Miami, Florida State and Georgia play each other in the Orange Bowl. The first two out play each other. December 30th, noon at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Ole Miss and Penn State in the Peach Bowl. Then you got on Friday, December 29th at 8 p.m., Missouri and Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Thursday, December 28th, we have, my fault, that's not a New Year's Six Bowl. Let me go to the Fiesta Bowl. There we go. The Fiesta Bowl. That is the last game that we're talking about. New Year's Day at 1 p.m. Eastern, Oregon and Liberty. Those are the New Year's Six bowls, and they're great. And I can't wait to see them. What do you guys? I mean, just comment down below. Message me what you guys are looking forward to. I'm looking forward to all those games as well. So let's talk about, before we break down the bowl games for this week and just talk about, let's just basically, I'm just talking just to catch up, right? Just to catch up on everybody and just catch up on everything because we've been out for a whole week and a lot of stuff in college football has happened. So let's talk about one quick thing before we go to the coaching carousel, before we go to the transfer portal. Let's talk about the Heisman. The Heisman Trophy presentation happened along with an Army-Navy game that day. Army-Navy happened, and then the Heisman Trophy, I watched it. The finalists were Oregon quarterback Bo Nix, LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix Jr. from Washington, quarterback from Washington, and Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison, the Biletnikoff winner. So when you look at the candidates there, all of them are deserving, especially Michael Penix and Bo Nix. They are deserving. But Jaden Daniels, I thought, was the most outstanding player in college football because when you look at the Heisman, it is awarded to the most outstanding player in college football. And it was given to the most outstanding player in college football, and that was Jaden Daniels. LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels wins the Heisman Trophy for 2023, and it's a no-brainer. I mean, he put up 4,000 passing yards and 1,000 plus rushing yards this season at the same time. That's unbelievable. The first person to put up 350 plus yards and get passing yards and 250 plus rushing yards in a single game, that's Jaden Daniels. He leads the league and he leads college football in almost every category. Rushing yards per play, 8.3 yards per carry. That is more than most teams, not just players, teams. And he's a quarterback. You got to give him the Heisman Trophy. He is insane. He deserved it. And there was nobody this season, even though they lost 3 games, he stepped up in every single game. Besides one, the only bad game he played in was Florida State. But even in defeat against Ole Miss, even in defeat against Alabama, in every single game they played, Jaden Daniels has been the it factor for LSU, and he is what makes that offense run. And we're going to see what it's all about against Washington. He is now leaving for the NFL, but will he sit out in the Rely Quest Bowl against Wisconsin? We don't know yet, but I will say this. If he doesn't, look for him to make one last lasting impression for LSU in the Rely Quest Bowl. He won the Heisman Trophy. He's earned it, and he deserves it. He is one of the best, and he's probably the best college football player this season. I picked Quinn Ewers to win it this season, but it's looking like Quinn Ewers might come back. So Quinn Ewers can be a Heisman frontrunner if he plays like he did again in the Big 12 championship game every game. So who knows? Let's go to the transfer portal. And before we talk about, the bowl games and before we talk about the coaching carousel, you're going to think, dude, you're going through this show. I am going through this show, but let's just talk about it. One big news is that Oklahoma quarterback Dylan Gabriel entered the transfer portal, and he has already announced where he is going. He is now transferring to Oregon. He will be the Oregon Ducks quarterback, replacing Bo Nix in 2024 as they move to the Big Ten next season. Dylan Gabriel in an Oregon uniform is going to be insane. It's going to be his final year of eligibility. He's going to finish his last season as an Oregon Duck. And let's just see what happens. That's going to be a difficult schedule to go by, and it's going to be a lot more competitive, especially because you're playing Michigan and Ohio State in the first season. So let's just see what Oregon does. I think Dan Lanning picked up a good pickup for Dan Lanning as they transition into the Big Ten. So good on Dan Lanning, good on the Oregon Ducks for getting everything done and landing a top quarterback like Dylan Gabriel in the portal. Guys, Ohio State quarterback Kyle McCord is in the transfer portal. He has been making visits to Miami, Michigan, Miami, Nebraska. He made it in, not Michigan. He wouldn't go to Michigan. Michigan State. He's made visits to several schools. Kyle McCord, along with Julian Fleming, is in the transfer portal. Ohio State wide receiver Julian Fleming's in the portal. They both visited Nebraska together. There's been a lot of talk that he will land in Nebraska along with a Julian Fleming, which is pretty surreal. The duo there landing in Nebraska together. So we'll see what happens there. But that is by far one of the biggest shockers that McCord would enter the portal. There's been rumors that he said that Ryan Day told him that he wouldn't be able, that his job was not fully secured in 2024, which made him ponder okay, I'm going to try to go somewhere where I can for sure start. In my eyes, I felt like he would have started in 2024 at Ohio State. But what do I know? He's in the portal. Washington State quarterback Cameron Ward is also in the portal. He is one of the he is the number one quarterback prospect in the portal right now. He is visiting Miami today. He's expected to make his decision soon, and that is a highly touted pickup right there if Miami gets him. Coastal Carolina quarterback Grayson McCall has entered the portal as well. Vanderbilt wide receiver Will Shepherd has entered the portal. South Carolina wide receiver Juice Wells has entered the portal. He is visiting Ole Miss, Texas, and Tennessee. Will Shepherd, I would watch out for LSU in this mix just because he's a Louisiana hometown kid. He may go back home, and LSU is going to need some receivers after this Relia Quest Bowl, especially with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Certainly not fully confident that they're going to leave, but certainly could leave LSU and go to the NFL. So Grayson McCall, I don't have a good read on Grayson McCall yet. I can see him going to Auburn. That's what I've been hearing as well, but Auburn is in the mix for a lot of quarterbacks currently right now. Walter Nolan, defensive lineman for Texas A&M, is in the portal. He visited Ole Miss. This would be a big-time pickup for Lane Kiffin, especially now that Ole Miss has got a lot of their players back, including Jackson Dart, Jordan Watkins, Dayton Wade, and Trey Harris. They are obviously going to potentially return Quinshon Judkins as he was a sophomore, so he's going to be a junior, right? He's coming back to Ole Miss. So Ole Miss is returning a lot of their guys, and they add some guys from the portal. They're just building up and building some meat there. Walter Nolan could be a good start of bringing some more physicality to Ole Miss. So Walter Nolan will be a good pickup if they can land him. Riley Leonard, Duke quarterback Riley Leonard has entered the portal, projected to go to Notre Dame, and he took a visit to Notre Dame the other day. Let's see what happens there. I fully expect him to land at Notre Dame after Sam Hartman departs to the NFL. Sam Hartman will not play in the Pop-Tart Bowl against Oregon State, so we'll see what happens with Riley Leonard as he is probably potentially being brought in for the 2024 season. One that struck me, obviously, this is what I've been hearing. Mississippi State quarterback Will Rogers has been trending towards Washington and obviously replacing Michael Penix Jr. for next season. That will be a good time pickup for Kalen DeBoer and Washington. So watch out for that as they transition into the Big Ten as well. Kansas State quarterback Will Howard, graduate transfer, has entered the portal. Will Howard, man. Will Howard. We'll get you some updates on all the socials for the transfer portals and the recruiting rankings as they go on now. So I'm going to update you guys, and we're going to have a recruiting show here in February. So just stay tuned into that when the time comes. But Kansas State quarterback Will Howard has entered the portal. I've been hearing a lot about Missouri and Auburn. Imagine him going to Auburn would be electric in college football. I think that would be a good pickup for Auburn and Hugh Freeze. I dropped my pen. I'm looking to get it. There we go. I got my pen. So Will Howard entering the portal, going to Auburn. That would be almost like the start of Hugh Freeze and what he did with Chad Kelly at Ole Miss, and it might be even a little bit better since it's at Auburn. The start of something good for Hugh Freeze if he can land Will Howard. So some good pickups there, some good stuff from the portal here. I mean, it really is some good stuff from the portal. Another one, Miami quarterback Tyler Van Dyke. He visited he visited Nebraska earlier, and he visited Ohio State earlier as well. So he's visiting a lot of guys as well. Max Johnson, he entered the portal. He landed at North Carolina. We have a lot of guys going to the portal, and it's quite shocking. DJ Uiagalelei is in the portal. He is visiting Florida State, Louisville, and Mississippi State now that Jeff Levy is in Starkville. So let's just see what happens with the portal here, and let's just see what happens. That's some updates and where everybody's going and trending towards. Just wanted to update on everybody, and wanted to update, a lot of stuff that's happening here. So the portal is heating up. There is a 30-day early window before it closes, and before we get into the spring window going into spring games and stuff, as I will give you my honest thoughts and my takeaways for spring game coverage. So transfer portal, here we go. It's heating up. Now, let's talk about the coaching carousel. Then we're going to break down some of these bowl games and then conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy. Coaching hires. Tulane has hired Troy head coach John Summerall. Why? Because Houston hired Tulane coach Willie Fritz. So Houston hired Willie Fritz, head coach from Tulane. He accepted the job, and he is moving to the Big 12, and that's a good hire, I would say, for Houston. Houston's going to, it's a good fit, I believe. I think they're going to win some ball games with Willie Fritz, and Willie Fritz is going to bring them back to that standard of Cougar football. For Tulane, they hired Troy head coach John Summerall. This is a good pickup too, especially after leaving, and after he left and brought Troy to where Troy is. Tulane's such a good stature school with Willie Fritz. I feel like with John Summerall, they could pick up right where they left off with, where Willie Fritz left it. And John Summerall can make them just as good, or even better, maybe, or even better. So let's just see what happens there. I thought it was a good hire on both accords. Guys, Matt Itz from North Dakota State is leaving their head coaching spot to go to USC as an assistant linebacker coach and assistant coach of the defense. Now, different hire when you look at it. You're thinking, okay, well, why would he leave a head coaching job? My honest thoughts are this: better opportunity. Yes, more money, but better opportunity as well. It helps. It helps when you go to a D1 school like a USC to try to get a higher graded coordinator job or a higher graded job itself. And I feel like, leaving a North Dakota State, not just because of the money, but because of moving up in stature for jobs and potential head coaching jobs in the future, this helps. So I could see the move, and I could see where Matt Entz is coming from on that. Wish him the best up in LA, and what happens with it. Hopefully everything goes well with USC there. So Duke has found their next head coach. Manny Diaz, Penn State defensive coordinator, will become the head coach at Duke. And I think this is a decent hire for Duke because Manny Diaz is a tough son of a gun, tough defensive-minded coach. And he's been a head coach before, but I feel like Duke is a program where he can fit in and he can deliver some good wins for this program. So I feel like he'll deliver a fantastic, solid, strong defense for this team. Let's see what happens on offense and see what kind of players and recruits they can pick up with Manny Diaz. But I feel like defensive-wise is a good hire. Let's just see what happens on the offensive side of things, and let's just see what happens with Duke heading into next year. So that was Duke. That's pretty much all the head coaching hires that I got so far right now. Besides James Madison, they found their next guy. Bob Chesney from Holy Cross will become the James Madison Dukes' next head coach. And I think that's a good hire for James Madison. Bob Chesney, proven track record, could very well, light up the Sun Belt and do really good, as the Duke's head coach. So let's just see what happens there with Bob Chesney. Kurt Ragnali went to Indiana. Bob Chesney comes in for James Madison. So that should be That should be good, right? That should be good for the James Madison Dukes. That should be good for the Duke Blue Devils. Should be good for USC, and should be good for Tulane and Houston. Those are the head coaching hires for currently right now. I also thought what coaching hire was funny was Bobby Petrino going back to Arkansas. I thought that was interesting. Arkansas it has hired offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino, their former head coach, back as their OC. And now he's back in Arkansas. It's going to be good. Speaking of Arkansas, one more thing for the transfer portal. They added Boise State transfer quarterback Talon Green. Talon Green landed in Arkansas. That's a good transfer to, to get for replacing a KJ Jefferson if KJ Jefferson decides to enter the portal or go to the draft. So good pickup there. Raheem Rocket Sanders has entered the portal as well. So they lost a good running back, but they replaced him with a good solid quarterback runner and a good solid quarterback in the air as well. So Talon Green ends up going to Arkansas. That was the head coaching hires, transfer portal. Let's go with the bowl games, and let's conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy, and let's predict and preview these bowl games. So, kicking it off with the Cure Bowl. The Cure Bowl, Miami, Ohio versus App State. This is Saturday, December 16th. We're going to go all the way to Monday, December 18th. We're doing 4 games, 4 NFL games as well. So, let's talk about this. Miami, Ohio, and App State. The keys to this game are quite simple. For Miami, you got to contain running back Kanye Roberts. Kanye Roberts is a lethal threat for App State's rushing attack. Put up some solid numbers. They're a top 20 or 20th offense in the FBS. But Miami's defense is 27th defense in the FBS. So they are a top 30 defense. They play some stingy defense out in Miami, Ohio. So they can find a way to contain Kanye Roberts and slow him down and play some defense. Miami, Ohio can very well find a way to beat the Appalachian State Mountaineers. So find a weakness in the defense of Miami, Ohio. So for App State, that's very simple. And what do I mean by that is move the ball in a way where you find your weakness, put the right matchups on that defense, and move the ball perfect down the field. So I think if you move the ball well, find the weaknesses of the Miami, Ohio defense, then App State can pull off the win in the Cure Bowl. It's basically football 101 with this bowl game. You got to try to exploit the weaknesses of the defense and try to slow down a high-powered rushing attack on offense. It's basically football 101 when it comes to both ends. Who wins this ball game? I got Miami, Ohio winning this game close. It's not going to be a blowout by no means. I got them winning close. Miami, Ohio improves and ends their season 12-2. App State ends their season 8-6. Miami, Ohio 24. App State 21. I think it's going to be a field goal win. Miami, Ohio 24. App State 21 in the Cure Bowl. Moving on, the Bahamas Bowl, Monday, December 18th, Western Kentucky versus Old Dominion. 6-7-5, Western Kentucky, Old Dominion 6-6. For Western Kentucky, you just got to start off fast. And a couple of games this season, they have not started off so quick. But I think once they pick up their tempo, it's going to be kind of hard to slow them down. So the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky just need to start off fast. Old Dominion, keep the game physical and in the trenches. I think if you win up front on both sides of the football and keep it physical, Old Dominion has played some physical football this year, and I think if they just keep it physical against Western Kentucky, they can try to find a way to pull out the win here in the Bahamas Bowl. So I think for one, you got to play up tempo, kind of a little bit of a newer style of offense and newer style of football play. And then if you were Old Dominion, you got to revert a little bit back to the old school, physical, tough, reverted back of play. And I think if you keep it physical and win it in the trenches and slow it down just a tad, You get the win here, and I think that's a big key for both Western Kentucky and Old Dominion. Now, who wins this game? I think it's going to be close, but I think Old Dominion finds a way to win this game. I think the Monarchs do it. They finish their season 7-6. Western Kentucky finishes their season 7-6, and they win the Bahamas Bowl by a score of 17-14. Old Dominion 17, Western Kentucky 14. They get the win here in the Bahamas Bowl, and they defeat Western Kentucky and upset Western Kentucky and keep the game physical and a little bit low scoring. Now, LA Bowl, and we will, after the LA Bowl, one more bowl game, and we'll conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy. The LA Bowl, UCLA versus Boise State. 7-5 UCLA, 8-5 Boise State. So for UCLA, what you got to do is play lights out on defense, man. You got to play lights out on defense. You're top 15 in total defense in the FBS with ranking 11th. You have the 11th best defense in college football. I think if you just play your defense and play a perfect defensive game plan, I think you can win this football game. You just got to slow down Boise State a little bit. And speaking of slowing down Boise State, the key to this game, because they don't have Talon Green anymore, he went to Arkansas. So what you got to do is give the ball more to their star running back, Ashton Jentney. If you give the ball to Ashton Jentney, Jentney will be fine. Ashton Jentney will be good. Establish the run with him. He's one of the most underrated backs in college football. Give him the rock. Let him run with it and let him pick up a lot of the workload on offense for Boise State. If you establish the run and exploit some of the weak and you kind of expose some of that weakness for on UCLA's defense, you can get them. And I think this would be a good thing to do, a good key to do. I think this is going to be one of the most underrated bowl games, not just this weekend, but period this season. So in this bowl season, UCLA, Boise State. Who do I have winning this bowl game? Close. I think UCLA does enough to win, but it's very close. I think this game goes to about 27-21. I think UCLA wins 27-21, and UCLA finishes their season 8-5. Boise State finishes their season 8-6. UCLA 27, Boise State 21. So 27-21, UCLA wins close. The Independence Bowl, and we're going to conclude today's episode with Pigskin Frenzy with this bowl game. The Independence Bowl, Cal versus Texas Tech. 6-6 versus Texas Tech, 6-6. For California, you got to find a way to slow down Taj Brooks. And what I mean by that is their star running backs electrifying. Texas Tech can run the ball with Brooks, and he is lethal on the ground. So for Cal, you just got to play some strong defense, and Justin Wilcox is known for defense. Just find a way to slow down Todd Brooks. And if you just slow him down and slow down their rushing attack, I think that's a good way of clearing a lot of what the Red Raiders are going to do out, and you find a way to pull out and win this game. For Texas Tech, you just got to play some clean football and limit these penalties. They are not the best team when it comes to slowing down the penalties. They commit a lot of penalties. They are they are tied for 49th in FBS when it comes to committing penalties, fewest penalties, which is not the best. So they don't play the cleanest of football, but if they play a little bit more clean football, I think they can find a way to not only play clean football, establish the run with Taj Brooks. They can get the win and pull it out in a good one against Cal in the Independence Bowl. Who do I have winning this ball game? I got Texas Tech winning this game. I think it's going to be a 2-score win. I think about 28-14 will do. Texas Tech 28, Cal 14. I think they establish the run with Taj Brooks. I think they play a little bit cleaner football, and they finish the season 7-6, and Cal finishes the season 6-7. 28-14, Texas Tech defeats Cal in the Independence Bowl. That just about does it for Pigskin Frenzy today. Guys, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by me. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple, all you got to do is just type in Pigskin Frenzy, follow, like the pages, and just share around with others there. Now, Instagram, X, and Facebook, all you got to do is just type in Pigskin Frenzy, follow, like the pages there. You'll get episode updates. You'll get news and highlights from across college and NFL football. You will get trivia questions on Instagram stories, go and answer today's, as well as all things up to date for Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday. We will be back to recap week 14 of NFL action Thursday. Guys, I did cover those games. Those were kind of a doozy. So we're going to talk about that, especially with the Bills and Chiefs and the Eagles and Cowboys. Guys, keep plugging into Pigskin Frenzy. I'm not going to hope. I'm hoping I'm not going to miss anything soon. Sorry about my voice. Hopefully it will be a lot better than what it is now. Until Thursday, I'm Joel Norris signing off, and we will see you then for another edition of Pigskin Frenzy. And for everybody out there, guys, stay the course.